welcome to Allah's Love for Islam. My name is Stephen Dickey, the host of this series. The speaker and director of Allah's Love for Islam is here, Pastor Harnish. This next presentation I think you've been telling us about is going to be challenging.
I think it's eye-opening, and I think that as both Muslims and Christians are viewing this program, they're going to find it exceptional, because I don't think Christians know a whole lot about the honored Quran, and maybe Muslims have a misunderstanding about Christians as well. And so this whole thing about creation, that's what this is all about. This series, this session this time is on creation, God the Creator. And we want to find out, there's things like theistic evolution that's flowing around today in many circles, both in Islam and Christianity. But we want to put all that aside, what the scholars and so forth are saying. We want to go directly to the honored Quran. We want to go to the Bible, the Torah and the Injil, and to find out what they're saying about how God created the heavens and the earth. I think this will be exceptional. So we invite you, viewer, to bring your pencil and paper and write down these texts as we're going along. Allah Created is the name of this session right now. And this creation account is being challenged. And who do you suppose is behind this account of challenging God as being the creator? It's none other than
the devil.
The devil, Iblis. There he is again. God created all these beautiful things, these planets, the world in which we live in, the human beings. And here now the devil is challenging this concept of this teaching, this true teaching. And so before we go into this, we want to pray, because it's always vital. Before we open up the honored Quran or the Bible, we're asking the God of heaven to help us, because we're in this mire, so to speak, down here below, trying to find our way on the straight path that leads back to the gardens of bliss, from where our original parents came from, and we're deprived from because of sin. But now we're trying to find our way back, and we're living in the last days. So we want to ask God to help us. So we're just going to pray. Kind God in heaven, we just thank you that we have this opportunity again to come before you. We thank you. You've revealed yourself in an incredible way through your word. And as we go to thy word, we know we will find the answers we need in life to these questions we have, and also it'll guide us safely upon the darkness in this earth. It'll guide us all the way back to the gardens of bliss. And we thank you in the name of the Creator. Amen. Amen. Today the creation account is being challenged. And I ask you, my friends, if you're a Muslim, do you believe the honored Quran? It's kind of strange for a Seventh-day Adventist to ask that question of a Muslim, but do you believe the honored Quran? Because it says there in Surah 754 that Allah, or the Creator God as He's known in English, He created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. I think this might be shocking to some Christians. They don't realize that this is even found in the honored Quran. It says there that the world in which we lived in was created by Allah in 6 days. We are thankful that you joined us, because I'm sure that this topic of discussion may be something that you're interested in. It's all about this creation account and who is the Creator, or did this world simply come about on its own from some event that happened millions of years ago? And so we've already prayed, and we just humbly ask that you would listen to this program regarding the creation account. It says there, your guardian Lord is Allah. This is from the honored Quran. Who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and is firmly established on the throne of authority. Then it says, He draweth the night as a veil over the day, each seeking the other in rapid succession. I believe from the honored Quran, this is a key verse in reference to the creation account.
That's amazing, because I've met many Muslim scholars, some, I won't say many, some, that recognize this false concept of evolution. And yet the book, the Quran, is something different.
I've even attended Islamic conventions, and there I've seen a whole booth where they were displaying books from an organization over in Europe that portrayed this idea of theistic evolution, that it took God, the Creator God, millions and millions of years. Each day was millions of years long. And yet, as I look at the honored Quran, it says that the night rather followed the day. In this creation account of 6 days, the night following the day in rapid succession. Millions and millions of years doesn't sound like rapid succession.
No.
He created the sun, it says in Surah 754, he created the sun, the moon, and the stars, all governed by laws under his command. Is it not his to create and to govern? Blessed be Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. Who made this world? Is this world millions and millions of years old? How long did it take Allah to create this world? So we're asking some pointed questions. And again, we go to the Torah. The honored Quran speaks very highly of the Torah in Surah 3:3 and reading onward. But here now it points to Genesis. And in the beginning, God, it says here, created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. That's what the holy books of the Bible say, that it was God who created the heavens and the earth. No question, it's made very plain. So we find out in my research that both the honored Quran and the Bible, they say it took 6 days for Allah to create the world in which we see today. And yet it seems there are few who really believe these words from the honored Quran and the Torah. Both say that the creation event took place in 6 literal days, not millions of years. Only 6 literal 24-hour days, not millions and millions of years. And this is found in Exodus 20, verse 11. And this, by the way, is another verse that's from God's law, the commandments. It says, therefore, in 6 days the Lord made heavens and the earth, the sea and everything in them. But on the 7th day he rested. And that is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he set it apart as holy. You know, it talks about in this verse that he created everything. On the 7th day, he ended his work, and that there he rested. You know, some people maybe are a little bit confused, thinking that God needed rest. This is not simply what it means here, that he was resting because he was weary. He simply ceased from creating. He rested from creation. And so he set apart this 7th day of the week, the 7th day Sabbath, as a day of rest. And he has continued that every week we have this 7th day of rest at the end of each week. This is the Creator's day of rest. He made it for us. He made all the creation in 6 days. And then at the 7th day, he ceased creating, and he invites us to stop our work as well, to come together, to spend the entire day in rest and remembering that God, Allah, was the Creator. You know, I believe, Stephen, as long as we're faithful to this command and keeping the Sabbath, the 7th day Sabbath of each week, we'll always honor God as the Creator. Evolution will find no place in our hearts. So, dear friends, as you're reading, whom do you believe, dear reader? Is it Allah's word? Or is it man's deceptive reasoning which has been heavily influenced by Iblis, the devil, Satan? Today in our world, we see the effects of the most deplorable teaching of the doctrine of evolution. It's also known in my vocabulary as evolution, because I believe that's exactly what it is. It's evil. Evolution is evil. And it started with a man by the name of Charles Darwin. And it found its way into almost all the schools that exist today on planet Earth, it seems. And he has taught that all men, this is what Darwin taught, that all men and the entire nature has evolved into being from some lesser form of life through millions and millions of years. And what this teaching does, it denies the Creator God. It denies Allah as the Creator, as the being who created all things in 6 literal days. The honored Quran has another story. In fact, it has at least 6 verses which tell a different story. Actually, I found 7 to be complete. There are 7 verses in the honored Quran that speak of a 6-day creation week, and there you can write those down because we don't have time in this program to go over every one of these. But it's found in Surah 10, verse 3, Surah 7:54, Surah 11:7, Surah 25:59, Surah 32:4, and Surah 50, verse 38. And each of these verses tell the same story of a 6-day creation week. And this is from the honored Quran. I hope if you're a Christian that you are listening, that here in the honored Quran it speaks about the creation, that God created these things in 6 days. You know, it's not all impossible for God to do this. He alone is all powerful. Who among men can do that? You know, it says in the Zabur, Psalms, which the prophet Daud wrote, he said, "For he, Allah, spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast." All that God has to do, all he has to do is speak. In Surah 546, the honored Quran says that the Torah and the Injil gives us guidance, light, and admonition to those who fear Allah. And so, you know, that's why we turn to these sources so often, because even in the honored Quran, it brings this out, that this is a source for guidance, for light, for admonition to those who fear Allah. And we can go to these sources to find out how was this world created and who created it. We already found out that God needs to simply speak His word and it's done. How quickly did the creation happen? There we go again to the Zabur, Psalms, which the prophet Daud or David wrote. We have this text. When he spoke, the world was created. At his command, everything appeared.
You know, you have to make a decision. If you're recognizing a longer period of time of evolution, you either have to say this is false, not from God, or man's way is right. It's simple as that. You have to come to a decision.
You can't mix the two.
No.
It's impossible to mix these two different teachings and theories. Excuse me. Allah needs only to speak, it says in Psalms or Zabur 33:9, and it happens. He just has to speak. And for this, we have an example of this in the life of Isa al-Masih, Jesus the Messiah. He simply needed to speak and it happened. That kind of gives you an idea of who Jesus was. Genesis 1, verse 2, and Genesis chapter 1, all the way to chapter 2, verse 3, gives the entire creation story. You know, we don't possibly have the time here at this program to go over the entire creation story, but you can go to a website. If you don't have access to a Bible to go to Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, you can get the entire creation account by simply going to e-sword.org. You can get a free Bible download on your computer and read the Bible in your own language. Remember that, esword.org. Now we continue with this program. There's an example from the Holy Books as to how the creation event took place. And for that we go to the Injil. Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 13. Back in the days when Jesus, or Isa, was on the earth, a Roman military officer came to him. And he came to him with a special request. Now, this is a heathen military officer from the Roman army coming to Jesus. And the Roman officer had a very sick servant. And his request was for Jesus, for Isa, to heal his servant. And Jesus said he would come to his home. But the officer rejected. To his stating this, he said, "Lord," he called him Lord, which is very interesting. This is in Matthew 8:8. "Lord, I'm not worthy that thou should come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed." So the officer objected. He said, all you have to do, he recognized who Jesus was, that he was a very, very special person that God sent. And this is what Jesus said to him in Matthew 8, verse 13. He said, "Go, it will be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that very hour. The Roman officer saw in Isa the same authority as the Creator. He needed to simply speak the word, and his servant would be healed. And it was so. The Creator simply had to speak, and it was done.
But the difference was there, that man believed, because if it was just words speaking, everybody would have been healed in the whole place.
That's right.
But it was the individual who trusted and had a conviction from Allah's Spirit that this was right.
And Jesus directed this effort to this one individual who was sick, and this Roman officer believed him. He believed that he was the man that was sent from God. And here in Psalms 33:9 it says, "For he spoke." This is referring to Allah. He spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood. This gives us an example of how God simply needs to just speak and it's done. It's created. You know, it stands to reason God doesn't need millions and millions of years. He simply speaks as Jesus did to this Roman military officer's sick servant. He simply spoke and it already happened. You know, God has given us a sign of His creative authority. He's left us this sign, and it is, I believe, it's the Sabbath. This seventh day Sabbath that we've been talking about in the fourth commandment, Exodus 20 verses 8 through 11. It says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But on the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." My dear friends, the fourth commandment is a constant sign, or it's a seal of God, that He is the Creator. You know, Muslims believe that Muhammad was sent as the last prophet. That's what tradition tells us, that he was the seal of the prophets. And friends, the seventh day is the last day of each week, Saturday. And this is the seal or the sign of God, which we are constantly being reminded that God is the Creator. And so this seventh day Sabbath is vitally important. We can't just set this aside. This is right in the commandments, in the middle of the commandments, in the middle of God's law. In one of our previous sessions, we saw that this law again was given to Moses as a reminder, and it also was given to him, Moses, on tablets of stone written by God's own finger. So that makes it really important. It says in the Injil, this is from Jesus, it says, "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created." This is Revelation 4:11. This is a revelation of Jesus given to the prophet John. God is worthy to receive glory, honor, and power because He is the Creator. And now in the end of time, we will be brought to a test. Will we serve the Creator, or, as we're going to find out in another series, will we serve the beast power spoken of in Revelation? So there's this contention that's going on in the last days. There's these two groups. There's the group in Revelation 14:7. One group worships the Creator God on His day, the seventh day Sabbath. Then we find out in Revelation 14:9, there's another group that also claims to be worshiping God. But this is the beast power, and it worships the beast, or the devil. So in the end of time, there develops two different groups of people through the world. One holds to God as the Creator, and they worship Him, and they believe that God created everything we see and that is around us in 6 literal days. They believe that God created all things in 6 days, and that this second group, undoubtedly much larger, which would also be religious. It's a religious group. They also believe in God, but they believe, and what they worship is the beast power of Rome, which is the devil is behind all this. The power which believes in evolution and not in the Holy Book's account of creation. And so there's a difference among these two groups. And as we go back to I found this on the website, the Catholic.org, the Vatican Observatory. There it plainly states, and this is taken from a document January 31, 2006. You can research this yourself. It says there that evolution and not intelligent design is fundamental Catholic teaching. This is from the Roman pontiff there back in those days in 2006. So it's interesting how, as Islam looks at Christianity, and they read some of these statements, and often Islam puts all Christians together into one hat.
Correct.
Or into one basket. When we go back to the holy books, we find out there's a group of people who do not believe that. They believe that God created everything in 6 literal days, just like it says in the Honored Quran and in the Bible. Today, the major Christian church in the world believes in evolution as a vital part in the creation of count. But friends, by observing the Sabbath day, man would always remember that he was created. within the first 6 days, and they did not evolve over millions of years. And it stands to reason, as man has forgotten the Sabbath, or Sabt, as it's known in Arabic, the seventh day. As he's forgotten this day, he has gone far off, he's gone far astray from the right course or from the straight path. If man had always remembered the seventh day Sabbath and honoring that day, just like Abraham did and how Ishmael did and all the prophets of old, how they honored that day, people would never have embraced the idea of evolution. You know, Stephen, I remember one day, this was quite some years ago, I asked one of my Arabic-speaking friends, a Muslim friend of mine, I asked him, what does that word sabt mean in Arabic? What does the word sabt mean? We thought for a while, and he says, well, that's simple. That simply means to be stagnant. I thought, that's interesting. Here in Arabic, the word for Saturday or the seventh day is sabt. It means to be stagnant. So all week long, we're running like this river. First 6 days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're running, we're working, we're going hither and yon, we're running like a river. But on the seventh day, God is asking us to be stagnant, to rest, to trust in God, and to worship and to honor Him on that day. And so I thought that was very interesting as I was visiting with my Muslim friend. You know, tragically today, much of mankind is out of harmony with Allah. Even among the believers, this sacred day of the Sabbath, which Allah has set aside for holy use, this day is totally ignored. To remind us that we should not forget, Allah upon the towering heights of Sinai spoke to mankind, reminding him to remember. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Observe the seventh day, or Sabt, or Saturday, which is to be a blessing to all mankind. Unfortunately, mankind has forgotten this. And the interesting thing about all this is this was not given, as we said previously in one of our programs, this information, this 10 Commandments repeated to Moses, was not given in Israel. It was given in Arabia, upon Mount Sinai. And so this was done to be a blessing to all mankind, not just to the Hebrew people, but this was to be for all people.
You know, if you go down this line of evolution, you pretty soon forget about God because you don't recognize that's the origin. And gradually, after generation, you get further and further away from God, and to where you go into this scientific community that can justify, they talk about the Big Bang Theory and about this evolution. They talk about the Isle of Galapagos down here off South America. Generation after generation takes us further and further away from the simple account that God gives us. And the further you get away, it almost seems like it's a higher science the world looks at and honors. And when the church at Rome recognized this, that here you have the supposed Christian leader of the world,
right,
recognizing a way that goes contrary to the God of heaven, it should shock the whole world. But the whole world is so numb.
Right.
They're not picking it up,
right,
and they're blindly marching to the day of judgment, the last day the Quran talks about, without recognizing that this is God's plan in His creation. He can create a new heart in you even.
That's right. We're going to discuss that in another one of our sessions. This is so important. You know, Stephen, I remember I was sitting in an airplane in 2006, and I was traveling. I can't remember if I was traveling to or from Africa, but I was sitting in the airplane, and it was the headlines of the daily news, the world newspapers, that Rome recognized evolution in its doctrines and teachings. And I remember I looked over and I saw the headlines, and I was visiting with one of the people there, and another passenger on the airplane overheard me, and he said he must have obviously been a Roman Catholic. I'm assuming that. He says, that can't be true, it can't be true, and yet it made the headlines of the paper. And here we have the document there. It was the church at Rome, and who do you suppose is behind all this, Stephen? As we've discussed in these series, you know, the devil hates the Sabbath. His hatred for the commandment is so strong that he's trying to eliminate it from the minds of the people. And unfortunately, the church at Rome also has this hatred of the Sabbath commandment. And it tries to eliminate it from the minds of all people as well. And so it tries to institute the first day of the week as being sacred. And this first day of the week, we've talked about this before, was the pagan day of the sun, and therefore it was called Sunday. Therefore they worship on the sun's day, Sunday.
Well, you know, that's why in the Quran, the Muhammad is saying there that those revelations came from Allah, chastise those people so hard about the Sabbath day that they turned their back from it, that they shouldn't do that, that he realized that when you turn your back away from the day of creation for the seventh day, that this was the devil's way. This was not God's way. This was not Ishmael's way. This was the devil's way. That's why Muhammad was chastising the men and women so hard for, why are you breaking the Sabbath day?
That's right. He obviously knew that this pointed back to the Creator.
Yes.
So as we continue, this giant religious system has attempted to make and to do away with Allah's sacred Sabbath and His holy laws written by His own finger. The Church's, here's a statement from Wikipedia, the Church's official position is fairly non-specific example of theistic evolution, stating that faith and scientific findings regarding human evolution are not in conflict. That's what it says here. Friends, how will you choose? How will you choose, dear friend? Will you accept the creation account as it reads in the honored Quran and in the Bible, that the seventh day of the week, each week, is set apart as being holy, to remind us of the creation story? How will you honor Allah? Will you be among the believers who truly believes the word that was sent down? You know, each Sabbath, each seventh day of the week, each Saturday is a reminder. So don't forget the reminder. Through the centuries, nothing has changed. The seventh day of each week, the Sabt, or Saturday, is still the day which Allah has set aside as being holy. Will you honor His special day by ceasing to work on that day? We just pray that Allah will richly bless you as you decide for Him. You know, as we've looked at this, some of you do not have access to a Bible, and we invite you to a free Bible download, www.e-sword.org. There the Bible is available online and in many languages. Hopefully you'll find a language there that suits you. We're so glad you joined us. If you have a question, go to the website www.salah-Allah. Friends, before we close in this session here, we invite you to bow with us in prayer. Kind God in heaven, we're just thankful again that we had this opportunity to be together, to go over these holy books, to go over the honored Quran and the Holy Scriptures, to find out who was the Creator, and also in reference to this seventh day of the week that He set aside to be a continual reminder, a continual memorial to the creation week. We thank You, and may we be faithful, dear Father. We ask it in the name of the Creator. Amen. Friends, we invite you to tune in next time on this same station to view the rest of these programs. We know that you'll find them very interesting, maybe challenging, but we invite you to come, and may God richly bless you is our prayer.